Chairman.
Okay, so good evening everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Mick Radley and I am the Chairman. Members, can I please remind you that this meeting is being broadcast to the public via the Council's YouTube channel. Before I begin with the main meeting, I would just like to highlight that this meeting marks our first in-person meeting since early 2020. As we go through the meeting, please can I remind everyone present to turn off their microphones when they're finished speaking, and perhaps more importantly, to switch them on when they want to speak. I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. So, agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. I believe we just have one member who has sent his apologies, Councillor Raymond. Do we have any others, officers?
No, Chairman, all the apologies have been received. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'll now proceed to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. Yes?
Well, it may be of interest. I'm one of the trustees of the Bocking Windmill and Council's representative for that, but it doesn't go any further than that.
Councillor Everard, in relation to which item on the agenda are you declaring that interest?
Declare it then.
Which item on the agenda are you declaring your interest?
Oh dear.
Because you only need to declare interest where you have an item on the agenda to which your interest relates.
I can raise it when it comes up, can't I?
But members, just to remind you, your obligation is to raise your interest in business items, not necessarily that you have got a general interest because you are a representative appointed by the council. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll note that then. So is it any other, there's no other declarations, so I will proceed to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I please have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the previous meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee on the 14th of July 2021? Right, Councillor Rose, thank you for that. And do I have a seconder? Right, Councillor Courtauld, thank you. The minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. The minutes are therefore approved, which I shall now sign. Confidence officer? Okay. Right. So now we'll move on to item 4, which is public question time. Members, I can confirm that there are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting. So we'll now proceed to item 5, which is the first quarter performance report for 21-22. Members, for this report, for this item is set out on pages 5 to 37 in our agendas. Can you please, I'd like to now invite Tracy Hedford, Business Solutions Manager, to present the report to the committee. Tracy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So the first quarter performance management report demonstrates the performance of the Council between the 1st of March and the 30th of June 2021. And it's presented to you tonight to inform members of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee on the performance of the Council following its presentation and noting at Cabinet in September. In the first quarter, we were beginning to emerge from lockdown, and a number of projects that had been delayed in subsequent quarters due to the pandemic have been reviewed and were brought back on track. The existing annual plan was also extended until September to provide much needed time for services to reflect on our position and how we need to adjust into recovery mode. So at the end of the first quarter, we have got 13 projects that are completed, 39 projects that are on track, and 1 project with an amber status. Some of the key achievements from our projects in the first quarter are in respect of improvement works, which are now complete to 4 play areas across the district. The artificial football pitch at Housestead Leisure Centre has also been completed, and that was completed ahead of schedule. And following discussions with the stakeholders, it was named the Callum Lees Memorial Pitch in tribute to the former Ramsey Academy PE teacher and the head of school. We have a mental health navigator recruited to help individuals with more complex needs to move away from rough sleeping, and the housing team also prevented 64 cases of homelessness in the first quarter. The Council of Community Grant Scheme awarded 16 grants to the value of just over £15,500, with 13 members contributing towards a £6,000 grant to the Braintree Museum Trust towards the delivery of the Summer 2021 exhibition, Space, Facts and Fiction. We had a Shop Local campaign called Click It Local, a little bit much like a local Amazon delivery service that was launched in April, and the Council successfully retained the Customer Service Excellent accreditation for the 6th year in a row. As I said earlier, there was 1 project with an amber status. That was in respect of the iConstruct Innovation in Construction Hub at the Enterprise Centre in Braintree. Building works had been progressing well, and the building was taking shape with at least 80% of the zinc cladding now completed. Unfortunately, in the first quarter, a subcontractor went into administration, which pushed the completion date back to September 2021. Just to give you a little bit of an update, because obviously we're past that date now, there have been a few more issues in the past few weeks regarding the availability and supply of materials. So the September date hasn't actually been achieved, and they're going to be reflecting on that and going through the appropriate change control and looking at what they need to set the new date for, but that'll get reported on in the second quarter report. So moving on to performance indicators, we have a total of 24 performance indicators. We don't set targets for all of the performance indicators, and there aren't as many set as there usually are because of the disproportionate impact that the pandemic has had on some of our areas that we do report out on. We have got 6 performance indicators that met or exceeded their targets, 2 that have an amber status, and 5 that have a red status. So the amber status mean they've missed target by less than 5%, and the red status is where they've missed target by more than 5%. And as I said earlier, we've got 11 performance indicators that didn't have any targets. So again, just to draw out some achievements from that area, we delivered a total of 91 affordable homes in the first quarter, which is quite an achievement. We've continued to collect 100% of all our fly tips within 24 hours of being reported to us. There were 259 new business startups across the district, and we had 191 businesses contact us, which we signposted to business support. The council has processed just over 1,200 business grants, which totalled over £7.5 million, which brings the total number of grants processed to just over 10,500, with a total of more than 54 million in grants being issued by the council since the beginning of the pandemic. And finally, just wanted to sort of mention that although they're still having to operate in line with COVID safety guidelines, it's good to see that the number of people that are starting to use our leisure centres again in the first few months of reopening. So just to take you through the performance indicators that missed target, they are the usual suspects. They have appeared in previous reports, and they're not going away, unfortunately. So we've got I'll go through the red performance indicators. They're the ones that have missed target by more than 5%. So you have the percentage of household waste that's sent for reuse, recycling or composting. That's achieved 52.26 against a target of 60%. It is where we've expected it to be. The tonnage of recycled material has increased, but compared to what we've had in previous years, but then obviously so is the waste in respect of people are still working from home, they're producing more waste. Again, the target of 60%, just to remind you, is an aspirational target which is set by the Essex Waste Partnership that we have signed up to, and we do obviously do a lot of promotional work around waste reduction, increasing recycling to try and encourage attitudes and change in attitudes and behaviours. We have the average time or average waiting time for applications of disabled facilities grants. This has been reported on a few times over the last few quarters because it has been one of the performance indicators quite heavily impacted by the pandemic due to the restrictions imposed during lockdowns, meaning we couldn't go into properties. So the larger, more complex grants haven't been able to be processed as we would have liked to have been able to, or as quickly during the pandemic. This area is now the focus of the team, and we hope we should start to see an improvement in the average waiting time over the coming quarters because we're not as restricted now, so they are starting to get processed. The average call answer in the customer service centre achieved 36 seconds against a target of 15 seconds. In the first quarter, the customer service centre handled over 27,000 calls, with 73% of those calls being resolved at first point of contact. The impact for the first quarter was mainly around sort of like the bank holiday weekends that we had in April and May. We get a lot of people that are phoning up after those periods to arrange bulky waste collections, so they're obviously very busy clearing, having clear outs. And obviously those calls do take quite a long while to process because they're obviously booking the bulky waste collections. We also had the elections, and we also started with council tax reminders again, so they obviously increased to the calls during peak times. Just to give members an update, at JET in September we did agree to amend the performance target for the call answer times to 30 seconds, so that will take effect from now in October and will be in line with second quarter performance report that we're reporting, or third quarter performance report, that we will be reporting on in line with the new annual plan that's coming out. And we're also going to be including the result at first point of contact into the reporting mechanism as well. So moving on to the percentage of invoices paid within 30 days of receipt, that achieved 97.08 against a target of 99.25, so only just went into the red. We had 72 payments out of just under 2,500 that were made later than 30 days of receipt. We have got a new system in place, and we are hoping that performance will improve as staff become more accustomed to using the system. It is quite different from what we've had before, so we are kind of ironing out a few of the anomalies with the different ways of processing the invoices. Collection rates of business rates is the last one that's got a red status. We achieved 25.08 against a target of 31.40. That target is based on pre-COVID collection rates, so it's not reflective of the previous year when we had COVID ongoing. If it was, then I think we would have marginally been slightly off it, but closer to achieving it. But we wanted to keep the targets at pre-COVID level because obviously that's what we're aiming to achieve eventually. Performance has also been impacted by the change in the retail rate relief from 100% down to 66%, which comes into play in July. So obviously they're going to be increasing liabilities for some businesses, so we will obviously be collecting that money at some point throughout the year. So we should be looking at achieving or getting very close to achieving the business rates figures by the end of the year. Moving on to the amber performance indicators. Kilograms of residual household waste collected per household, slightly over the target of 117 kilograms at 119, and the collection rate for council tax achieved 30.1 against the target of 31.06, so less than 1% off its target, which again the target is pre-COVID levels, so I think that's doing quite well considering. The report also contains further information on staffing, health and safety and complaints. We had 159 complaints in the first quarter. That's marginally higher than what we've had in the previous quarters. Of those complaints, 154 were stage 1, 2 were stage 2 and 3 were stage 3 complaints. Throughout other areas of the report, sickness does remain low, as it has done in the past year. There was also a reduction in the number of reported accidents and incidents, with the majority of accidents being reported by waste crews. In respect to the financial performance, the report contains a very detailed update of the financial position as at the end of the first quarter, examining the latest forecast for spending on a day-to-day provision compared to the budget for the year. It also includes a summary of Treasury management activities, projected movements on the general fund balance and a summary of spending to date on the capital projects. It also has an update provided on the financial impact arising out of the pandemic. So just to summarise the financials, we have a net budget position forecast for the year. It's a positive variance of 252,000. That is taking into account the impact of COVID and variations to the base budget. We have the estimated base budget impact of the pandemic is 1.213 million. This is expected to be partially offset by funding received from government, and it should leave a net projected variance of 278,000. The forecast position regarding the base budget is a positive variance of 530,000. After taking into account other planned movements in balances, the projected change in general fund allocated balances is a reduction of 384,000. And lastly, expenditure of 5.53 million on capital projects during the first quarter. Spending has mainly been incurred on Horizon 120 Business Park infrastructure, which is now completed, the new Horizon 120 Enterprise Centre, iConstruct, Manor Street Regeneration Scheme, and the House of Leisure Centre artificial pitch. I will leave it there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Tracy, for your report, as ever. Very thorough. And so really, I just want to open up to members if you have any questions. Yeah, Councillor Sphere.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tracy, for that report. And I must say, I'm very pleased to see the figures of 100% of fly tipping collected within 24 hours. I particularly note that in rural areas, this is very much appreciated by the locals, some of the landowners and farmers, because the ditches that gets filled in interferes with drainage. So I think that's an extremely good service, and I know it's been going for some time, but I just want to say thank you on behalf of certainly all the residents in my part of the world. The other question I have is for iConstruct. You mentioned that it's gone over the opening time, and James may be able to update me on this, is with regards to costs. Has the costs also gone over, or is that to be included? Because I know building costs have gone up considerably, but perhaps you could just give me a bit of an indication on that. Thank you.
I haven't received any indication that costs have gone up. I will obviously take that question back to the service, though, and find that out, and we can obviously get that reported into the second quarter, because the impact that's happened recently in respect of the delay in the supply of the materials may be just because they can't get hold of the materials, or it could have a cost implication as well. So if there is a cost implication, I'll get that reported on in the second quarter. But certainly the first delay there's no cost implications for the first delay. That was simply just a subcontractor that went into administration, so it just took a little bit longer to get that part of it completed.
And could I, thank you, Chair, if I could just come back on that. And also, has that had any impact on the fact that we were due to open that much earlier, and our relationship with the businesses and the educational establishments that we were hoping to start on time?
Again, I'll have to take that one back to the service and answer that one if that's okay. I'll feed that back by email.
Okay, Councillor Spears finished? Yeah, okay, thanks for that, Tracy. You get an answer back to us on those points. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? No? I have a couple. I'd just like to add to this. Firstly, regarding the finance summary, it's good to see that we have a positive variance now of 252,000 forecast for the year. But that's partially offset, as you said, by COVID, giving a 252 net position. in the budget, we agreed to set aside £1 million for COVID support. Does that mean that that £1 million is not required, unlikely to be required now? Perhaps, I guess, if you don't have an answer, perhaps you may take that back to the finance team.
Yeah, had Chris have been here, I'm sure he'd have been able to answer that one. But I will have to take that one back,
I understand
Chair,
that. Yes, if you could, do we still need the £1 million from reserves? Is the question. It's quite simple. That.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll find that out for you.
Thank you. And a couple other things. In the list of projects, I was a bit surprised not to see the town centre regeneration project for Whittam and Helsted. I looked 2 or 3 times, I couldn't see it, unless I've missed it, and it's somewhere different, because there are resources and funding committed to those projects, and it was in the previous, not the previous quarter, but in the previous generation of the report. It's still a live project.
So we do have a project in there. It is just under the Victoria Square development one, which is around the redevelopment of the entrance to Whittam Town Park. I am pretty sure that there was something around the, like you say, the Helsted and Whittam. If there isn't in this, I can certainly say it is in the next annual plan, so it will be reported on moving forward.
Right. So it is in one of the objectives, but it's not clear that it's a separate project, if you like.
Yes, so there is definitely work going on.
I know.
I would have expected to have seen that under the first area, but again, yes, you're right. I can't see it on there, but it is definitely in our new annual plan. So
right,
you'll be seeing reports on that coming forward.
Okay. Do you think then it's possible you could give us a written response to that after the meeting on an update on the status of those 2 projects?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. And then, lastly, regarding the complaints, thank you for your feedback, by the way, on the justified complaints, which we tabled last time. It's quite clear that the vast majority of the justified complaints come from operations, which probably comes from the waste management area, mainly on pickups, I guess, on waste. And looking back, the level of complaints has been fairly steady over the last 2 or 3 years. It hasn't really changed, to be honest. It's up and down a little bit, but not dramatically changed. I guess my question is, are there any targets? Clearly not in the reporting, but do the team have targets to reduce the number of complaints and actions? And is it in their in the management's appraisals and things like that? Is there recognised that there's an issue, and are there targets and plans to do anything about it, is I guess the question.
I'm not 100% certain whether or not the services have their own targets. They will target missed bins, for example, so they do have a target around the missed bin side of things. Complaints, I know, are reflected on in their management team meetings. So I do an analysis for the waste complaints for them and present, or I don't present that, but I provide them with the reports, and they do go through that in quite a lot of detail, so they can look for improvements. I think they would obviously always have a target of trying to make sure that they're not complaints aren't escalating, but I can speak to Mr. Partridge and just sort of see if there's anything else they do regarding that. Yeah.
I guess my question is what has to be done to move the figure, to make it go down significantly? That's my question, because you look here, it's virtually a complaint every day. Every working day there's a complaint reported, justified complaint reported.
Yeah. I guess when you look at that in comparison, though, with the number of bins that they're collecting, it's very, very low.
Yeah.
But yes, I take your point.
Okay, thank you. Whoops. Does anybody else have any further? Yes, Councillor Rose, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's just a quick question, really, Tracy, regarding complaints. If residents mix up their waste, then the crews are not obliged to take them. They put plastic with paper and that sort of thing, or contaminants. But I was just wondering where it says here about the bins too heavy for the vehicles, and most common is where soil is put in the bins. Do we ever have an advisory note to the residents not to put half a bag of soil in there in the bottom of the waste where they can't see it, but the crews will move it. They know it's heavy, so they may well leave the bin because they can't move it, whatever reason. But that then results in a complaint. I just wonder if we could perhaps head that off somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, again, I'll feed that information back to the operations service, but they should sticker the bins if they don't take them. It might just be to contact the customer service team, and the full note is placed on the ecosystem because they've obviously got the handheld devices where they can state the reason why they haven't, collected the bin. Overhearing calls in the customer service centre when it is due to, being filled up with mud and things like that. We do ask the customer if they can remove some of it because obviously it's not necessarily for that, it's garden waste like your grass cuttings, tree fells and things like that. It's not necessarily for a load of mud to be dumped in it because it will break the mechanisms or break the bin when it's getting lifted into the back of the lorry. So yes, customer service advisors will let them know in respect to that. The contamination is more around sort of like the recycling side of things where people are not, they might put Tetra Pak into the clear sacks, or there could be polystyrene in there because they haven't taken the polystyrene out of cardboard boxes, things like that. So it's just, and again, they are stickered and told there's contamination and what's in the contamination. So.
Thank you, Chairman.
Jess.
Thank you, Chair. My question's on the projects. One of them is to continue to support NHS England to improve healthcare facilities across the district. My interest really is on the Whittam one, but the question is, what practical input and assistance can the district council give, as this is predominantly an NHS project that they would need to deliver, not the district council. Just wondering what we can actually do as a district council to move it along.
I'm probably going to have to take that one away again. Not sure, obviously, I don't want to say what I think that the district councils can do to sort of like move it along, but it's all to do with sort of like primary care networks and the work that we're obviously doing in conjunction with them. So obviously there has been a change around how the CCGs want to operate, and a lot of it's getting referrals in and seeing how we can assist as well. So, and it's about seeing if we can help with provision of NHS services. So, but I will take your question back to Lee Crabb and see if I can provide a more formal answer to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Oh, yes, Councillor Everard.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is on the accidents. Well, one of them on the accidents which the bin people have, and I noticed that most of it was on their hands, and I'm sure they wear protective gloves and things, but just wondered how these happened.
Okay, Tracy, do you any information you have regarding that?
Yeah, so it can be anything from trapping a hand in a bin to, as one of them says, obviously cutting their hand on some glass that was sticking out of a bin. They do have gloves to wear, and you'll probably see them around with the, running with their gloves on. Obviously, some things can get through the gloves, and there's bruising. They're going so fast, and they're like putting the thing, the bins on so quickly. It's just been where they've sort of trapped their hands, or where they've had to get the bin quite quickly. They might have grabbed it too quickly and just sort of missed it and things like that. I did have a quick look at the accidents. They weren't really anything significant, but obviously they do report out everything. The really significant one was in respect of the glass that was in the black sack that wasn't visible, but when they went to pick it up, did go through the black bag and cut their hand. So.
And my other question was, is it easy to have dialogue with the primary care trusts? They are still fairly embryonic, and I just wondered how we're getting on there.
Again, I will take that one back, but I know there are regular meetings around all of the primary care networks, and especially during the pandemic, we did quite a lot of work with them. We supplied them with stuff that we have from the elections to help with their queue management for doing vaccinations. So we did have quite a good rapport with them, but obviously, understandably, they had different priorities during the pandemic around obviously getting people seen and obviously with the vaccination rollout. So that's one of the reasons why conversations were delayed, but we do have regular meetings with them, probably more so during the pandemic than what we probably would have moving forward. But yeah, so there's certainly a good dialogue that goes on between us and primary care networks.
Okay, do we have any more questions or comments? I'd just like to thank you, Tracy, for your response on the questions from the last meeting. Thank you very much. That's particularly on the health and safety, because it does, and the members have touched on it again this evening. I think it's quite clear that there seems to be an organisation structure in place for managing the health and safety and the training as well, which is based on your feedback, which is encouraging to see. So thank you for that. Okay, so thank you, members. If there are no more questions, which I don't think there are, for Tracy, I will remind members that we're asked to note the report only. So thank you very much, Tracy, for your report and the responses provided to the questions raised. So thank you very much for that. If you'd like to leave the meeting, you're very welcome, but you're also very welcome to stay. So I'll leave that option to you. So thank you very much.
Chairman, before you take the next item of business, we have had an email from Councillor Unsworth giving his apologies for this evening's meeting.
I see.
Thank
right.
you.
Okay. In which case we can note that, I guess. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman.
So we'll now proceed to item 6, which is the scrutiny review into commercialisation's third evidence gathering session. Members, for this item, we are due to receive a presentation from James Sinclair, Commercial Manager, as part of the committee's ongoing evidence gathering for the scrutiny review into commercialisation. Specifically, James' presentation provides us with an update of the Council's trading services. So I'd now like to ask James to invite James to make his presentation. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Radley. Excuse me. Thank you, Councillors. So, commercial team supports, as we set out in the previous two presentations, projects and contracts across the organisation, noticeably the Investment and Development Programme, which you spelled out in greater detail previously, and that includes the 1.6 million challenge programme to target the council budget gap. The presentation focuses on, or this presentation focuses on the key traded services, the ongoing work to engage staff in the 1.6 challenge, a graphic of the ideas that have been generated by staff from the Managers' Conference, and then the team structure, which is currently a trial team structure around commercialisation. If we can go to next slide, please. Okay, so this slide sets out our key traded services, as I mentioned. The local authority accounting approach does cause some difficulty in the way we're structured, in that a number of these traded services work both across existing or support to the council, but also to traded and paid for services. So that can cause difficulty with the split between those paid for and those council-supported services. Clearly, over the last 18 to 20 months, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact across a number of our trade services, and we've tried to provide a comparison of this to show both the effect of this and what we should be generally trading on in the upcoming year. So we have the 2021 figures, which see obviously significant reductions across trade waste, particularly the Enterprise Centre, as you'll see, because it was closed for large chunks of time, but also across other areas such as reprographics and graphic design, etc. So This sets out, as I say, the 2021 figures and the net outturn of those in comparison to the 21-22 figures, and we've included the key trade services, as I say, on there. And if we want to pause just while we have that slide on the screen, if anyone has any particular questions.
Yes, indeed. This is quite a lot of information on this slide, so I think it is good to pause and to focus on this a little bit. Anybody has any questions on the information? Yes, Councillor Everard.
Thank you, Chair. Trade waste, how do we treat this? We separate it out and goodness knows what, but how do we get our money and everything?
Absolutely. So trade waste relates obviously to that waste which is collected from businesses across the district. I guess the key differentiator for the Braintree trade waste team compared to some of the commercial trade waste teams is that we will collect across some of the rural parts of the district as well, so providing a really needed service to our rural businesses, which would be probably more expensive, potentially may not be serviced outside of the trade waste function that we operate, although say that's something we need to look at. So the waste is collected separately and is dealt with, obviously using the vehicles that we currently have, but is collected separately. Although there is some mixing of waste as I understand it, but I would have to go back and ask operations around the exact kind of methodology for that.
Yes. How much goes to landfill and all that sort of things? Obviously, we reprocess a lot of stuff, or at least somebody does.
Absolutely. The mix of what goes to landfill, what goes to recycling, would be a question I'd have to take to operations.
I think if we could maybe stick to the commercialisation aspects of this rather than the operational side, I think that would stay focused on the task. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope my question fits into your criteria there. James, I wonder if you could just clarify, with the reprographics and graphic design and printing, we have an income for both revenue streams there, but there's absolutely no expenditure. Do we not buy paper or consumables or cost copy agreements or anything like that? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, James, would you like to
Absolutely.
answer that one?
Thank you. Yes, this is a difficulty, again, with the accounting. A large chunk, obviously, of the cost is the people who are assigned to the traded element of the reprographics and the graphic design. But those same individuals are clearly providing services to the council as well. This is something that we are looking at to get a sort of a breakdown around that. So far, it's been difficult to achieve. Hence, rather than putting some kind of attempt at a figure in there, we've left it at zero, just to denote that that's something that we'd need to look at. But absolutely, clearly there are costs against that we would need to reflect. But we don't have that breakdown of costs, unfortunately, at the moment.
I'll be with you, Councillor Caudrell, in a moment. Just to clarify, when in the expenditure columns, that really is only the direct expenditure that can easily be labelled against these activities. There's a lot of additional shared costs which are quite difficult, like the one you described. It's to draw out and allocate to these items. So these are the minimum costs, if you like, almost like the incremental costs to the activity. So this is the way to view this, whether we think this is good, bad or indifferent. I think that's reasonably fair to say that, James. Is that?
Absolutely. Some has more costs attached to it than others, such as trade waste. But there are some difficulties in sort of arms and legs of people, etc., which to put against that. And again, that's the approach we take around accounting for these elements. But certainly that is a difficulty.
Indeed. Councillor Corbett, next.
Thank you. James, I'm sorry to be thick. I think I am being very, very stupid, but I don't quite understand why the income figure has a minus in front of it. Am I just being a moron here? I mean, I would have thought minus 45 grand plus. I've been very stupid. That's actually, we've got income of 45 in. We've spent 51 grand. Why is the 45 grand in got a large minus sign in front of it? Is me being thick?
No, absolutely not. I had to say, if it is, it's my. I had similar level of thickness. This again is to do with the local authority accounting. So minus a positive figure into the budget is so an income is a minus figure, and the expenditure figure is there. In fairness, probably what we should have done with this slide is to kind of reverse that out and change it into the other way. But okay. This is a direct kind of pull from the.
As long as I wasn't just sort of acquiescing to some enormous scam. Okay, thank you.
No, they are.
It does make sense once you work that out.
I had the same issue at the beginning, and you're absolutely right. It is a accounting terminology, I guess, for us laymen is perhaps not quite user-friendly.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, please. The one that sticks out is pest control in that it's a net expenditure to the council. So from a commercialisation perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Is that COVID related, or is it something more action needs to be done to sort of turn that position around?
Thank you, Councillor Coleridge. It's not COVID related. No, it has a net expenditure, I guess, against pest control. I guess a number of these services have a commercial angle to them, but also have a social angle too. So, pest control will be providing services to vulnerable residents at low rates, so to enable those pests clearly to be taken out of where people may not necessarily be able to afford that from other operators. So and you can see that across things, pest control, trade waste, as I mentioned before, around some of the rural elements of that, and across some different areas too. Just clearly, that doesn't mean that we just sort of sit there and kind of accept that situation. So we are working to increase the income coming into pest control to offset that loss. So at least it's a sort of a net zero position. And so some things we've been doing are greater advertising, advertising through our council publications on our roundabouts to try and increase the usage of that. But also we recently bid and were successful for the Eastlight framework for pest control services. So we hope that we will get business from Eastlight for those houses, and that will again increase the income, so we can get to a net zero position.
Okay. Any more questions? No? I just a few comments and conclusions I draw from this. Really, I think the first three items on the list, pest control clearly is one that needs to be looked at. In my view, I think is perhaps a recommendation that's coming out from what we're doing. Trade waste and horticultural services, although there's a generated income, it's about 9 or 10%, which on the cost basis this has done isn't really a lot, quite frankly. And so I think those three areas are ones that perhaps we might ask to be looked at in more depth. if we look at the all the graphics and advertising stuff, yeah, clearly there is some cost there, but it does seem that those areas are adding quite a bit of commercial benefit to the organisation. So, you know, those are potential areas for growth, I would suggest, to be looked at. So, and payroll, as we've seen before on a couple of occasions that James explained us there, clearly that is this is the net benefit there. So I think those are the sort of conclusions I draw from this. There are some areas that need to be looked at further. There's some areas that could be grown. But I think it's a good, without going too detailed in real detailed costing, it's a pretty good overview just to give us a snapshot, if you know, if what this commercialisation in BDC looks like, and to try and steer some direction in the future. Does anybody else have any further questions on this slide? And I'll ask James to continue with his presentation.
Very well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So James, over to you. Carry on.
Thank you very much. On to the engagement slide now. So as you'll remember, I updated on the 1.6 million challenge, which is a key programme for Braintree District Council at the moment, which is gathering ideas from colleagues and members across the organisation to really try and drive our innovation in the way we do things, and look for opportunities where we can plug the budget gaps. To help with that engagement, we undertook a managers' conference and had a ideas session in there called the Idea Incubator, and I'll move on to the benefits of that in a moment. But that was held on the 21st of July and was really successful. We generated nearly over 100 ideas from staff, and we've been spending the months since filtering those down and putting some or doing some feasibility work across those ideas to see which ones we should be taking forward and investing our time in exploring. So managers also recreating that idea incubator as part of their team meetings, and we hope that that will be a regular thing that we do as we move forward over the next several years to make sure we're always capturing ideas and looking for opportunities to increase income for Braintree District Council. We also have started a commercial insights workshop. So this is training essentially, and several different layers of training, recognising that we are a district council and commercialisation is not the kind of key aspect for why people have got into public service generally, but it is a key element of what we need to understand going forward to try and offset some of the budget challenges that we'll face over a number of years. So by providing training workshops, by having inspirational speakers into the organisation to talk about how they have delivered commercial benefits, we hope to instil that commercial culture within Braintree District Council, as I say. On next slide, please. I'll pause after this slide, but just as a sort of indicator, we had a word artist in who captured all of those ideas that I spoke about in the managers' conference, and we have these dotted around the organisation to inspire yet more ideas. But this shows the ideas that were picked up by our colleagues during that session. And some really good, interesting ones, particularly around some of our key priorities as well around the green economy, which we are looking to take forward at the moment. I'll pause there in case there are any questions on those two slides.
Right, yes, Councillor Rose.
Just a quick question, Chair. Thank you. When we have these ideas in from managers and employees, James, do we look at ideas from other authorities that we may be able to build upon? Because sometimes we get stuff come through that says a certain council has made this innovation. I just wonder if we pick those up, not copycat them, but it could dovetail and fit into our operation without perhaps going from scratch, so to speak.
Absolutely, I'm all for copying. Ask my university lecturers. Yes, we have. Clearly, the managers are plugged into a whole set of different networks that they're operating. So operations will have operations networks across all the different districts and county levels. But also we have set up something called the Essex Commercial Network, which takes commercial ideas from across different districts within Essex. And we are also part of a cross-council revenue generation group, which is actually a nationwide group that talks about the commercialisation activities that are happening across councils and other public bodies across the whole country. So we regularly attend those meetings, and we'll pick up those ideas and we'll feed them into this process essentially to see if they can be applied to Braintree District Council.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James. Does anybody else have any questions on this at this stage?
Yes, absolutely. So just to finalise, all the commercial projects have been undertaken are being undertaken by staff. So what we wanted to do was not have commercialisation centred just in one or a couple of people across the organisation. What we want is for these projects to be happening right the way across the organisation with some support, yes, centrally. That's why we're offering those training and we're embedding that cultural change. The commercial manager, so myself at the moment, is a shared role between Braintree and Essex for a trial period. We set out that structure below. So my role there would manage the programme embedding commercialisation, support that income, address project issues as they arise, and then also manage the procurement team, identifying saving opportunities there, which is a new addition to my remit. Then we have project management support, who will be driving and pushing all of these projects that we've identified through the 1.6 challenge and the investment and development programme, and flagging up risks and making sure that they deliver, frankly. And then we have Jeremy, who, again, a key part of the commercial team, who's the sales lead, and will be driving many of these traded services that we talked about in the earlier slide. And there's also a senior officer in the new shared events team. So we have set up a shared events team now, which operates across all the venues that are on offer within the council. So we'll have the town hall, the Horizon 120 Centre when that opens, and also the new iConstruct Centre when that opens, as a really good, a fantastic, frankly, events offer for businesses and residents across the district. So that's something that Jeremy is very much involved in.
Okay, right. I think that concludes your presentation, James. Does anybody have any questions, further questions, or any questions on the last slide? No? I understand the evolution of change, but one of the good practices which this council has had is having a commercialisation manager. In other councils, I think where they've been successful, it is where you've had a commercialisation manager, and I think that enables the organisation to be cross-functional, which is always a good thing, to be able to complement the single entities, if you like. And so I think, whilst I can see you're sharing your time now, we just wouldn't want to lose that within the district council, to lose that element, if you like. That's, I guess, my only concern. But, yeah. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to endorse your comments, but also I really do welcome progress in this commercialisation as well by the officers and what they've put forward. because I think this will have benefits not only in the short term, but obviously medium and long term as well. And I think it's very important as a council that with the assets and also the skills that we have, so that we can be flexible and agile and respond to commercialisation as it comes along. So I think it's really important. Thank you.
Yes, my question on waste was really that are we exploring all the ways that we can make money from the waste, not just the collecting?
Thank you, Councillor Everard. Yes, so as part of our waste collection generally, we clearly there's a key element around recycling and recycling credits achieved from that. So in the same way as residential waste, we would look to generate income, obviously both from the collection of the waste for businesses to pay us in doing that clearly as a service, but also in the recycling and the benefits from that. And we have a new materials recycling facility outside the district, but that is an effective way of getting the optimal price for that recycling.
Okay, any more for anyone? Okay, right, members, we've now received 3 evidence gathering sessions, one of which included a presentation from Cabinet and officers regarding the plans and initiatives for the 1.6 million challenge that James has highlighted again here, which actually includes commercialisation. So I think, personally, I think that's a very good initiative that the Council has launched, and it demonstrates a commitment to commercialisation, I believe. And I think that's good that we've seen that in the past and seen it yet again here. And it does seem to be a live process that is happening within the organisation, which is very good. We're very grateful to James, who's committed his time to give us help and insight into his role and also commercialisation at BDC. Following the last session, officers didn't receive any significant feedback from members requiring further work. I therefore suggest that it's time to draw this scrutiny to a conclusion. I propose to work with the Vice Chair and governance officers to prepare a draft report of our scrutiny. And if any of you have any particular recommendations you feel should be included in this report, then please send them to governance officers for consideration and as part of that discussion. And once the draft report is completed, that will be circulated to all of you as members for you to have an input into and to comment upon before it's actually presented for final approval. We can obviously keep continuing on and on. I'm sure we could be here for another year talking about this subject, but I think we really have had a good look at this. And I think there are, particularly this evening, there's some good conclusions we can start to draw from what we've seen and put this together as some sort of conclusion. So, James, thank you very much once again for your presentation and all the work you've done for us regarding this topic. As we've concluded our evidence gathering, you are, of course, welcome to leave the meeting if you so wish. So, members, this is just the presentation is for noting, so we'll now move on to the next agenda item, which is the decision planner. Thank you, James. So, the decision planner for 1st of October 21 to 31st of December 2021, members are asked to note the decision planner for that period. Before we do this, do members have any issues that they'd like to raise in respect of the decision planner? No? Okay. No particular issues there. So, thank you, members.
Chairman, sorry, just before you close the meeting, just to remind me, just picking up on the points that you made about members having thoughts around where they want to go in terms of their contributions to the scrutiny report. What I would ask members to look at the terms of reference, reflect, because if there is anything that you feel that we have missed, we do have a limited window for anything that you may want to explore. And it's just to remind you, you're not here to fix the commercialisation issues of the organisation. It's your scrutiny lens on what we are currently doing as an organisation. So we will recirculate the terms of reference just so that you can look back on the minutes, on the recordings of these meetings, and then sort of come to some conclusions. But if there is some areas that do need to be explored because or there are some questions we need to put forward, there is that limited window in which we're to undertake that.
Sure.
There's obviously the timetables to have this scrutiny review presented for Council and Cabinet at the end of this civic year. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. It's a good point to make there. You know, we're not trying to cut anybody off. If you still have points to raise, then by all means, as Emma says, that's be very welcome. Okay, so back to item 7 then. So thank you, members. Do I have your members' agreement that the decision planner has been noted? I think of a show of hands yet. Okay, all right, that's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Everard, were you okay with that? Is that okay, that's right. You didn't put your hand up. That's okay. Just to be sure, I didn't want to declare it unanimous if you hadn't. Okay, thank you. Right, thank you, members. The decision planner has been noted. So, members, there are no urgent business for this evening. This item concludes our business for this evening. I will therefore close the meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee at 20:15. Thank you, members, for your attendance this evening and those watching the broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. Thank you.